Do now is put the trigger in the vaccine, the catalyst, and that'll trigger things that people have already been given during their lifetime, however long ago. And depending on the
Well,
age that people were vaccinated on, different compositions of different viruses.
but if we look at it from like an actual medical standpoint, right? We have all these viruses in our bodies. They're all in our bodies, right? So if the biological suit is like 7,000 years old, right? It's replicating over the last 7,000 years from the Sumerians just in this cycle, right? So, four times before that, there's been an extinction of the humanoids that they've created because the experiment's gone bad. So the last experiment started in around the Sumerian time, which is like 7,000 years when, it's in the Sumerian tablets. They started making us. Hello, it's right there. And the Sumerian tablets are the same as the Old Testament, except for they changed the word God. They changed the word gods or Sumerians to God, right, and turned it into a Christian thing. But it's the same exact story as the Sumerians. So if our bodies have evolved, for the last 7,000 years here, and maybe been tweaked here and there, genetic experiments by extraterrestrials and our government and our hospitals and whatever else and things they spray on us, we all would have the viruses that have been around, right? So there's just different things that cause them to come up and cause them to stay dormant. So all you would have to do is add a frequency to set off some of these, bacterials, viruses, um, flus, whatever you want to call them, and that would just activate them fully. So I'm thinking like you just add a frequency in there, and then all the people who have had, somewhere in their bacteria viral load, yellow fever, boom, all of it comes up. I mean, because you could get bit by a mosquito that has yellow fever and not get it because you have a strong immune system. But what if it's a dormant virus in your system, and then all you need is like a frequency, and it just full blown activates it?
So, what is Lyme's disease?
Well, it depends on what kind of Lyme's disease you have. You have a West Coast Lyme disease, or do you have an East Coast Lyme disease?
Well, they scared everybody
Um,
with Lyme disease about getting bitten by ticks. Is it really a tick borne virus from nature, or is it something devious?
well, I think that there are some ticks that are sick, and they're carrying viruses. I mean, all I don't know. I look at a lot of virus as parasitic, whether you can see the parasite or you can't. For example, mouse, they get that one parasite that gets in their brain, and then the parasite takes them near cats. So the cat will kill them because the main agenda of the parasite is to get into the cat. And so the mice will act really weird. They're like causing the cat to kill them. They're putting themselves in the vicinity so the cat will kill them and eat them, which goes against what the mouse would normally do. So I believe that ticks, a regular mainstream Lyme disease, is a parasitic virus that some ticks get, and then they transfer it to humans. And it can cause autoimmune system disease. It can make people really exhausted. It can make them, once you have autoimmune system disease, it's easy for you to get anything, a flu, a virus, and even cancers now. Research is finally starting to tell the truth that all cancers are viruses. Stomach cancer is a virus, esophageal cancer is HPV cancer virus, right? Mouth cancer without smoking or chewing or doing any of that stuff that would cause the cancer, but that's also an HPV virus, and then that HPV virus also can go down into your stomach. So you can have sex with lots of different people and kiss people and pick up all kinds of viruses that are going to kill you. And right now, yeah. So the other thing is, the regular, type Lyme disease, I believe, is a parasite that a tick picks up, which is pretty common. All kinds of things in nature pick up all kinds of parasites that, transfer, that turn into viruses, transferable, because I mean, they just want to take over they just want to take over the brain and the hard drive of the system. That's what all parasites really want. And so they can do that with fever or whatever else, or, yeah. The East Coast Lyme disease is a Montauk Island monster virus. And because it all seems to kind of start, if you look at the map of people on the East Coast that got started getting involved, getting the East Coast, I'm going to call it the East Coast. There's a documentary called Under Our Skin that people should watch. You can find it free, I think, on the internet, Under Our Skin. And it talks about people who have been infected with the East Coast virus. And any attempt of doctors on the East Coast to try to figure out how to help them, these doctors have their licenses pulled, the government goes after them, discredits them, because they want it to spread. So the East Coast Lyme disease is really bad. If you're healthy, you never want to live in the same household with certain people who have Lyme disease, because you can pick up their viral load. And the East Coast Lyme doctors are saying that it is transferable like a STD. So just like a sexually transmitted virus, you can get it from your partner. So it's pretty serious. And what it does is it affects the neurological part of the brain. And so people have seizures, they shake, they can't walk, they can't think. They need, serious care, but it's just a massive parasitic disease. And so some doctors were trying to treat it with heavy amounts of antibiotics, which was helping, and coming up with treatments to help people with it. And then, like I said, the government started taking these doctors out because they didn't want people healed or treated, because it's a parasite, which is a virus, right? That they're hoping will, continue to, the viral load will continue to keep going across. And then think about that. You have a tick that's healthy that bites somebody that has this, now it turns it into a super virus tick. So the other thing could happen, like you could start getting bit by insects, and then they start picking this up. They start picking this parasitic, viral load up, and then they go out and bite somebody else. So, the whole thing is, so the East Coast Lyme disease is bad, super, super bad. So bad that people get mad at me, but I tell them all the time, I'm not going to be living in the future, in the next few years, anywhere where there isn't snow and ice. And moving any place where there's like high, what they call it, vector, where the vector is high. Vector is like, bug-borne diseases, malaria, crazy Lyme disease, a lot of these kinds of things that have gone, crazy mutated. West Nile virus, blah, 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 blah. So, because a lot of that stuff, well, at least the majority of it will kind of die off at the end of the year, if it gets frozen. I mean, it's funny because I have friends of mine who like want to go live in communities like in Bimini and all these other places, or the South. There's a lot of people down there, like Asheville, and there's like huge amounts of people that are moving over there. But the bugs that they have over there are deadly, and you're going to be forced to have to go to a hospital because you're going to be that sick. So at some point, the hospital is going to pick you up, and then you become like the scientific study. You can't stay away from the medical situation. And then you can't stay in your community either because you're a viral load that can make everybody else sick. So I'm like really, really cautious, and I never used to be that way. But one of the immunologists that I worked with in the past said, no. She said, when I travel or people want me to speak and lecture, or I go here, I go there, she goes, I don't go anywhere where there's high vector zones. She said, because you know what? I would be stupid for me to go in there and infect myself when I already know that the potential of being infected by something is like extremely high, but I'm going to go there. She said, she said, I'm adamant about not going to South American countries, in any place where it's too warm.
The people who live there are already immune to that because they've been living in that vicinity all the time. It's only travelers who go into the vector.
That's not true. Nowadays everything is mutating, and so people that may have been, the older type version of virus, now the parasitic parasite wants to, move forward. It's going to adapt faster than humans in order to make that happen, because its main agenda is to, get in the body, right, and organize and grow and take over. And for example, this is so the same immunologist told me, like 5 or 6 years ago. She said that the main reason that we can't allow illegal immigrants to come into the country without screening, and Canada is huge about this. Like, you have to, if you want to go to the doctor, or you need to go to the hospital or whatever else, and you're illegal in the country, you're not going to get seen by anybody. And if you try, you're going to end up probably getting deported and arrested. Because when you come into their country and you're going to live there and you want to be part of the medical system, which means you can't just walk into a place, the number one thing that you have to have is a chest x-ray, which is to indicate if you have tuberculosis or not. And why? Because in the Middle East, they have new strains of tuberculosis that have mutated that are non-curable, right? And it's like basically your lungs over time liquefy into, fluid until you cough them all up and you die. I mean, tuberculosis is a really, 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 really heinous way to die. So in the Middle East, they said something like 1 out of 5 have this virus in them, or it's already active, and then they come in, they come into other countries, and then they start exposing the population. So the whole illegal immigration thing should be really looked at by our government as more of a medical thing. And we should really get away from, these people need to come to another country because, they're trying to run from what's happening in their country. And it should not really be political or legal. It should be like point blank, number one thing is medical. That these people have to, you want to come in the country and live, you have to provide a medical history. If you're sick, you're quarantined at the border until they figure out what's wrong with you. Because, that can kill huge amounts, major populations. Look in the old days. Almost every movie I watch that's historical or series or whatever else, you have all these people dying of consumption, which was tuberculosis. And it would kill whole families. And it would stop. In some cases you'd have, and this was the regular strain of tuberculosis, but sometimes it would stop, it would kill 3 people in the family, and then it would stop for a few years. And then because other people in the family had been exposed to it, then 3 years later, then it starts up again, right? Full blown. So, and then kills the rest of the family, and maybe 1 out of, 10 people survives it, right? But the whole family dies, 9 family members. The children, the wife, everybody else, maybe the dad survives, or maybe the brother survives, or whatever. So, but the tuberculosis that's in the Middle East is so deadly, and tuberculosis passes so rapidly, and sometimes early stages of it, you can't tell what people have. You might see some coughing and whatever else, and lack of energy or whatever else, until they get, to the part where they actually start coughing up blood. So the thing is this is the thing is, we can decide, we want to bury our heads in the sand and forget about what's going on and hope somebody's going to save us. But, we're kind of at a point where people need to be aware. We need to start being aware of what is going on in the public. And what does that mean of how we're going to keep ourselves safe? For example, I have nothing against Muslims and I have nothing against Islam, but I would never go live in any area where there were a lot of people from the Middle East, not because I have issues with them, but because of the viral load. I don't know if I'm compatible with their viruses or not. And if they have, low-lying tuberculosis that hasn't, surfaced yet or whatever else. So, so this is kind of an interesting thing. So there was this doctor that put out, hold on one second. Oops. I got to plug my tablet in because I'm going to go dead on you.
Oh, that's a good thing to do.
Okay, here we go. So I'm so glad I got to talk on a show about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's pretty serious with the 5G thing and what the potentials of it that it could activate, in the human body.
Would you like to take a question from the audience?
Yeah, hold on. Can you give me that question in just 1 minute? Just let me get the rest of this out. So there was this doctor that was on one of the flights, the one that came from Dubai to JFK Airport, and he wrote a letter that went to a underground media about what was on that airplane. And he said, as a doctor, he had to pretend that he kind of wasn't a doctor so that he could witness what was going on as they were removing them from the flight. There were 550 people on board. And he said that there were people that were bleeding. They were bleeding a little bit out of their ears, a little bit out of their mouth, coughing. And he said, as a doctor, he's seen that before, and he considered it to be Ebola. And he said that there was a whole bunch of other people on the airplane that were seriously sick, way more than 100 people, And so one of the things he said was that these different viruses or whatever, flu-like symptoms and whatever else, looked like a certain kind of disease to him. And he had traveled all over the world, and he had been involved with lots of, viruses, you know what I mean? Had seen a lot because he's traveled. And he said he had to pretend like he wasn't, that he wasn't a doctor, that he wasn't important in order to get out of there, and that show that he was perfectly healthy in order to leave the scene, in order to be able to get this article out to the masses about what he saw on the plane. Because if he would have said, yeah, I'm a doctor or whatever else, he would have been quarantined. And he said all the people that showed up there to quarantine the plane and everything were more focused on getting the phones, getting the tablets, getting any kind of thing that anything may have been recorded from the plane on, and going through these devices and removing all kinds of information that had to do with the plane flight. So, what if they 5G experimented on that plane and they put out a frequency that whatever each person's body, because they said that they were, not all of them were sick when they got on the plane. There were some stewardess and some other people that wanted masks because some of the people were sick when they got on the plane, and the people were asking for masks, viral masks, in order, because it's a 14-hour flight, and there were none available. And then some people got really sick, were perfectly healthy and got really sick on the airplane. So what if they were like putting out some kind of different kinds of frequencies that was activating different kinds of things in different people's bodies? And so you had some people that caught the flu all of a sudden and were sweating and had high fevers and were coughing. And then you had some that started having Ebola type symptoms. And then you have some that are, having, malaria symptoms. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like they knew, when these people were getting off the plane, that it was all like experimental or something. that it wasn't like catchable or something, because why would they let, like 200 people just walk off the plane without even knowing what people were exposed to? So I'm just putting that out there as a thought, as a side thought. Okay, so go ahead with the question.
Hi, my name is Bob. I'm very much enjoying what you're talking about. And I wanted to ask you to backpedal to the meat, the concept of meat.
Yeah.
Once, excuse me, you went past talking about meat, you were basically describing symptomatic events. So to reverse the symptom without working on what's causing the issue is going to be an uphill battle. I wanted to find out more in respect with Cain and the curse of children of Cain. Um, I've heard, and this is something that I resonated with, that when they talked about the forbidden fruit, it wasn't the forbidden fruit, it was the forbidden food, and that was meat. A lot of our, if not most of our ailments are caused by consuming meat. That's become apparent in the scientific and health sector. I've reversed majority of my ailments by going vegan. But more important than the physical ailments is there's also a notion that our consciousness is expanding and our body has to catch up to our consciousness. Now,
right, but this is okay. So you have to go back. You have to go back further than the forbidden food.
Okay, and I'm going there, and this is where
okay.
where the point of my question is coming. If we look at ourselves internally and our gut flora, the bacteria that we're constituted from, and we compare ourselves to that bacteria on the planet, and the symptoms of our internal reality manifesting externally, which affects that bigger system, that impacts the inner system, and it's ping-ponging into a spiral. So wouldn't it be the consciousness of the bacteria, which is extremely ancient, and it's the one of the smaller building blocks of life, that is part of this entire position that we're in right now?
Well, it was until until there was a huge amount of Wi-Fi, smart meters, and now the 5G. Now that trumps everything, and it can force our bodies to do all kinds of things. Is kind of like the thing, and it can also cause a whole lot of other things vibrationally. But let's go back just really quick. So there have been studies that have shown that pit bulls who have been inbred and have more tendency towards aggression, they're fed vegetarian food and they're not fed any, like regular dog food, carrots and fruits and stuff like that, that they never really exhibit aggression, right? But if they're fed meat or raw meat or bones or anything like that, then they become a lot more aggressive and dangerous, and have a tendency to bite. So way back long before, the Garden of Eden or whatever else, you have to go back to the story. So the Anunnaki started making the Aduman, who was the first humanoid like us in this last go round, and they started mating him with an Anunnaki called Lilith, and they were having a really hard time. Mind you, the Adam was Anunnaki and human. The Anunnakis are known for being aggressive, not that friendly. And so Adam, or Aduman, was a lot more human, so he was more kind and gentle, and and things like that. Well, then they started to try to breed him with a Lilith who was 100% Anunnaki, and the experiments really didn't go that well, and Lilith didn't really like Adam. So what happened was they had one offspring, and the offspring was called Cain, right? So Lilith disappears out of the picture. They need, to propagate this new population that we are part of. And so they make Eve, or whatever, if you want to call it Eve, but they make a woman, and they basically say it. They took the DNA from Adam's body, and they created Eve, who was similar to Adam, so it would be easier for them to mate and propagate children. And then they had Abel, right? And then the story between Cain and Abel. And Cain was very aggressive. So the heirs of Cain, we could say, are more reptilian. They're more aggressive extraterrestrials because they have more of that kind of a DNA. And then there's the heirs of Abel, the line that comes down, which are us that are more human, that want to eat a vegan diet, that want to be kind to animals, that feel compassion and feel all these different things, where the Cains don't feel that, right? And so we're living in a whole population. I think more than ever, only 30% of if we want to call us humans by I'm compassionate, I care about this planet, I care about the food I eat, I care about other people, I care about the water, that's human. There's only like 30% of the, however many billion they say are here, are actually human. And if you were human and then you started to eat meat, you started to get more aggressive because it started to bring out the other part of the ancestry, which is the Anunnaki. And then there's a lot of the Cains that can't be fixed, which are the hybrids. And there's a whole bunch of other hybrids. So the other 70% are androids. They're hybrids. And some of them are shapeshifters, which are different kinds of extraterrestrial races. So the people that are being targeted right now are the humans, the ones of us that are really trying to move away from, eating meat, really becoming aware, really becoming consciousness, really kind of studying these things. And now they're using 5G to target everything. I mean, you can't have a healthy bacteria in your gut if you're anywhere near computers, if you're anywhere near smart meters. Those things slice and dice your DNA. They damage your DNA so that you can't replicate. Your body cannot ever regenerate itself. So it doesn't even matter about bacteria. You go through one of those body scanners, in the airports, your DNA is cooked. And you're not going to be able, you're going to age really rapidly. You're going to have all kinds of diseases because the DNA can't replicate itself. So this is what happens. So the brain, this is how we're supposed to work. Okay, but if you have an injury, you have some kind of head injury, you have an injury to your spine, you're eating toxins, you're not getting enough certain kinds of nutrition like vitamin B that coat the nerve endings that help to send the signal. And also, and some of it can be your belief systems, right? But if your brain, say your heart regenerates every 6 months, and your brain sends a signal through your spinal column, through your nerve endings. So your neurons they charge up and they send a signal to the heart and they say, hey, heart, hey, it's time for you to regenerate yourself. And the heart, spouts back, hey, we're ready for that to happen. Then the brain says, okay, go to the DNA strand and copy paste it and then regenerate a whole heart. And then what happens is they say that there's not even one cell left, tissue or anything, once it's regenerated, right? And that's supposed to happen every 6 months. So what happens is that people have a lot of injuries. They have head injuries. They're taking different kinds of medicines. They've eaten foods. They're being sprayed with chemtrails, Wi-Fi, all these different things. And so the signal no longer gets down to the heart from the brain. And so the body can't even regenerate. So if it can't regenerate, there's no way that the bacteria part is really going to matter. And so with the 5G, yeah.
If we look at longevity of the average lifespan has been increasing tremendously. A few hundred years ago, 40 was getting towards the end of your life. So there was no 5G back then.
Right, there was physical labor though, and enslavement. The thing that we were designed for was the enslavement.
Right.
For the, harvesting and mining and stuff like that. So we don't do that as much, but they do utilize us, for that. And I have to tell you that the new statistics that are coming out, that the life expectancy right now is 65. And the life expectancy of CEOs, and this is in America, the life expectancy of CEOs is 60. And the life expectancy of the general population right now is 65. So there's all kinds of problems that are happening due to the chemtrails. A lot of people are getting, they're dying of respiratory infections across the board between, 60 and 72. So they're putting the life expectancy right about 65 for the general population. Because there's just a lot of things involved that, that are really kind of destroying us.
Right. So the physical labor, the viral infections, it shortened our lifespan earlier on. Now I'm wondering if instead of it just shortening our lifespan, if it's mutating us, and part of the mutation is the process that we're going through.
Yeah. Well, it's not mutating us, it's the designers that are mutating us, and they're turning us more into like a transgender species, which is more android, because we've been breathing in a lot of this lithium and heavy metals for such a long period of time that we have so much metallic nanoparticles in our system that eventually we'll be able to be, ran by remote control just like a robot.
Right.
And some people are already getting that right now. There are already people who have been, completely taken over now that the 5G is flipped on. I'm lucky we don't have 5G, but I'm watching them strap, all the places that I've been traveling, I've been watching them strap 5G units onto the public water towers. And there's no way that you can clean that out. And that kind of frequency in the water, it will kill you. It will just kill you, because if you look at a lot of these kids who've done these kindergarten experiments and they give them 2 squash plants, and one of the plants they water with regular water out of the sink, and the other one they use water that they've microwaved in a microwave oven. And within like 3 days, the squash